Good morning and welcome back. This is Liam Bowler and Dynamic Alignment Bodywork here in my office. Making a couple videos this morning actually, and this first one is about your shoulder girdle as a whole from fingertip to fingertip. I know you can't see my fingertips, but they're there. As opposed to, or kind of inclusive of, two individual shoulder joints. And I could go on and on about why I think this was important, but maybe one little nugget to drop right now that might be useful in your life is that obviously when something's in pain, one of the principles that I work with a lot in this office and outside is when something hurts, it's often the overused tissues as opposed to the underused and often more interoceptively and proprioceptively offline. So in this example, there might be one shoulder and a lot of us that hurts, if you're in whatever poses or movements, and there can be a lot to be gained by sort of taking that isolated pain and integrating it in your feeling sense more and more into your whole structure. And the other video I'm going to do is actually about integrating that into your feet. But again, this one is about from fingertip to fingertip, these long arm lines. If you haven't ever checked out Tom Myers in Anatomy Trains has these beautiful dissections of the arm lines, the superficial and deep, front and back arm lines, and that could be one view of the anatomy and a really cool thing to see. You can envision the shoulder girdle like the yoke on an ox, right? So again, yes, we have these two ball and socket joints, but in terms of the soft tissue, the muscles, the fascia, and then nerves and veins and arteries and everything that is embedded in that fascia and just goes along for the ride with our structure. Atop our rib cage, it gets placed down. You can sort of envision it that way. And so here's the exercise. And I'll show in standing. You'll stand up, standing tall, find your feet, as opposed to when we're doing this exercise, if I'm going a lot like this, you might feel more disconnected from your feet. So not just a straight line, but that feeling of like, whoo, here I am. Arms up. I'm going to bring one arm into internal rotation and the other arm into external rotation. So think about from fingertip to fingertip, like I'm wringing out my whole shoulder girdle from arm to arm. So one side will drop down, the other side opens up. While I'm doing this here, I'm going to turn away from the arm that's internally rotating and integrate the neck into this a little bit too. So I can turn. You can take a breath or two here and then back into neutral, and then you'll do the other side, of course, dropping this arm down and turning. Something came out of the computer. So dropping on each side and turning. A couple things to watch out for. One, and I already mentioned this, but I'll bear it again. Especially when you're doing stuff with the shoulders, you may feel, watch my back. This tendency to happen a lot. So as much as your trunk is relatively relaxed in this, where I'm just, rib cage is over my pelvis, is over my feet in a way that I don't even need to hold it there. Just relaxed into that position. And then two is watch how I can turn the hand and get a lot of what's called pronation at the forearm, but not really go up into my shoulder. Okay, so I could be doing this. Yeah, I'm internally rotating and I'm externally rotating here, but I haven't really brought it up into my shoulder girdle. So do both, but do bring it into your shoulder girdle is what I'm suggesting. And once you get the basic movements down, and again, turning is optional, at least the arms, I'm feeling for this fingertip through the shoulder girdle, through that yoke of the ox to fingertip. This connection, that awareness piece, which only comes from the inside out, is also really important. It is, I'd say, the sort of crux of this movement exercise for me. In and out and feeling especially this space. It won't be a ton, right, especially as you get closer to the sternum, but definitely some sort of soft tissue pull, and starting to feel this as one thing. I know I'm kind of saying the same thing over and over again, and I hope some of it clicks, because it can be easy to miss and do sort of in your awareness, just having these two things happening. Of course, like I just said, right, we're feeling that oneness of it. So here, and you might well feel this sort of classical stretch feelings too, rotating in. You may well feel, and you may notice in my body, one side like this rotation looks and feels quite different than this rotation. For me, I can explain at least some of that with some old shoulder injuries, but even if you've never had shoulder injuries, that's just how we're patterned. One side will be different than the other, likely. And either way, pay attention and find out. So I don't know, do that as long as you want, but I'd say a few minutes, maybe 5 on each side of pretty slow quality. Wringing like a sponge, hands open. It can be a great little reset. Of course, for your workday, you can do this sitting. A great reset and thing to do maybe before any movements that you're using your arms and feeling that like one thingness happening here. I hope this helps.